Hey guys, it's Brian with the Daily AI Show. Welcome to another Saturday Conundrum. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. But just know that this episode, our Conundrum Saturday episodes, are a bit different. Actually, they're a lot different than our regular shows. You can find everybody from the Daily AI Show doing live episodes Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We have 465 episodes at this point, so come out and join us for those great discussions as well. On our Saturday Conundrum one, big difference here is that we are not doing a live discussion about it. Yes, I do this intro very quickly, but what you're about to hear are two Google Notebook LM AI co-hosts debate a topic. And if it's a conundrum, then the idea is that it doesn't have an easy answer. And I really, really love these. It's sort of a passion project for me, and I really enjoyed putting out these conundrums. Now, today's conundrum is perhaps one of my absolute favorites to discuss when it comes to AI. And we're going to call this one the Resurection memory conundrum. What do I mean by that? Well, something I've talked about on the show quite a bit is I am one of these people that's actually excited about the idea of, with consent, obviously, people who have passed in your life, whether that's family members or otherwise, there being some sort of future AI, let's call it avatar, or, let's call it an avatar, where, my mom who passed in 2008, I fully understand that it's not her and that it's an AI simulation of her. But I am the type of person that would find solace, would find comfort in being able to have conversations and hear my mom's voice, just to talk about whatever, knowing full blown that it's not her, that it is a representation of her. And obviously it has to be something that she would have consented to before her own death. Of course, 2008, that wasn't possible. I see a lot of value here for comfort, support, grief, counseling, everything. But there's obviously a lot on the other side of this. And the question becomes, as we get closer and closer to having the ability to create not just voice avatars of deceased ones or loved ones in the past, or people that were friends or family of ours, but also the ability to actually see their face, to see in a video of them, an avatar of them that, doesn't have the uncanny valley, that looks just as real as the last day you talked to them in person or like a Zoom call, right? Like, does that change things when I can see my mom just as I remember her, having a conversation with her? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Does it start to mess with my memories that are real? Do I start to conflate them with memories that are AI driven and aren't real? It's possible, right? So it's a very maybe slippery slope, maybe it's not, but it's coming. And so this conundrum, this discussion is really all about what's there today, what could be there in the future, and both sides of it. What should we do as this is coming down the pipe? It's going to be possible. People are definitely going to do this. Where do we fall on either side of it? So the conundrum is, if AI lets us preserve the dead as interactive, intelligent avatars capable of conversation, comfort, and emotional presence, do we use it to stay close to the people we've lost? Or do we choose to grieve without illusion, accepting the permanence of death no matter how lonely it feels? Is talking to a ghost made of code an act of healing, or a refusal to be human in the one way that matters most? All right, you've heard my intro. I talked a little bit longer on this one, but I love this topic. I love this discussion. It's endlessly fascinating to me. So let's dig in and hear what our two AI co-hosts have to say about it.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really fascinating and honestly a bit unsettling. It's this emerging tech that lets us create interactive digital versions of people after they've died. You might have heard the term digital resurrection starting to pop up.
It really does tap into something deep about being human, doesn't it? I mean, for ages, we've found ways to stay connected to those we've lost, visiting graves, saving voicemails, looking at old photos.
Right.
But what's different now is the potential for, actual interaction, moving past just remembering passively into actively engaging digitally.
Exactly. We're talking about tech that can rebuild a voice from maybe just a little bit of audio or generate a face from pictures. And it's getting better really fast. You can imagine future versions mimicking mannerisms, using familiar phrases.
Maybe even drawing on shared memories if trained on personal data like texts or emails. Scary stuff, potentially.
So it's not just a static photo anymore. It's something that could well, feel like they're still present
Yeah.
in a way.
And that brings us right to the core issue. The real conundrum we want to explore with you today is using this kind of AI to keep a connection. Is it a way to heal? Or is it maybe a refusal to accept that death is final?
It's a really personal question, and as we get into this, you'll see there are just so many layers, no easy answers. Our deep dive today pulls from excerpts from a study called Digital Resurrection, Grief, Ethics, and AI Afterlife. Gives a really valuable look at different viewpoints and the early research in this space that's changing so quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack the pro side first. What are the arguments for using this technology?
Well, a big one revolves around this idea from grief research called continuing bonds.
Hmm.
It's the notion that our relationships don't just stop when someone dies physically. Healthy grieving often means finding ways to sort of keep that connection going as you move forward. And some people who've lost someone have described these AI chatbots as a new and sort of different way to process grief, like a way to share feelings with something that kind of echoes the person.
That connects to something interesting in the study, doesn't it? That person who said the AI helped them rekindle that part of me tied to the deceased. It wasn't about replacing the person, more like accessing an internal feeling or memory.
Precisely. It's seen as a tool, maybe, for that internal grieving process.
Yeah.
And we see a really clear, practical example with Michael Baumer. He was facing a terminal illness, and he worked with this company, Eternos, to make an AI version of himself. His whole idea was to give his wife a way to still ask him things, get a sense of his answers, after he was gone.
Wow, that's a powerful example of wanting that continued presence. And building on that idea of keeping an internal connection, we also see this tech being talked about for like unresolved grief. The suggestion is it might offer a kind of soft landing after someone dies, a space to maybe ask those questions you never got to ask.
Yeah, and what's interesting there is the immediacy of the response. Even though you know it's a simulation, it's different from, say, writing a letter you know won't be answered. The AI gives you something back right away. And that could be especially powerful if the loss was sudden or complicated. No chance for a real goodbye. You see companies like Hereafter popping up, letting people record stories for their families to access later.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
And Storyfile, doing interactive life stories, sometimes even used at funerals. It all points to this desire for connection, maybe closure.
It really highlights that grief is just so individual, isn't it? There's no single right way. So advocates frame this as just another option, another tool in the grief toolbox, as they put it. Not replacing anything, just adding something that might work for some people.
Exactly. And there were initial worries, would this make people more isolated? But the early research suggests that's not necessarily happening. Many users say it actually complements their real-life relationships. It doesn't replace them. They still value their human connections.
Okay, so there's definitely a strong case there for the comfort, the connection aspect. But, like with any really powerful new thing, there are big concerns on the flip side. Let's dive into some of those ethical and psychological worries.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first one, the really big one, is consent. That study we mentioned, it found this huge drop in people being okay with digital resurrection from 58% down to just 3% if the person hadn't explicitly agreed to it beforehand.
Wow, only 3%. That's telling.
It really underscores this fundamental issue. Are we violating someone's wishes, their rights, after they're gone?
It feels like such a critical line. And the law, well, it seems like it's struggling to keep up, right?
Definitely. China has some laws that touch on it, maybe, but in many places there's just nothing specific for this kind of digital afterlife. There's this legal scholar, Mark Bartholomew, who argues we need a whole new calculus in law to protect people from being, digitally reanimated without permission. He talks about a right to be left dead.
A right to be left dead. That's a striking phrase. What kinds of specific harms are we talking about, beyond just general privacy stuff?
Well, imagine someone's digital likeness being used in a way they would have hated or manipulated. Or just think about the distress for family members seeing a digital version that feels wrong, that misrepresents the person they loved.
Yeah, that's more than just data misuse.
And the privacy concerns are definitely there, too, for everyone involved. All that data, voice clips, photos, messages used to build the AI, if a company holds that, well, you can see the potential for misuse. Even kind of commercializing grief.
Like that example someone used. Culber's AI abuela may try to sell him ready-to-eat mofongo. A bit crass.
Yeah.
But it makes the point about commercialization.
It does. And beyond the legal and privacy angles, there are major psychological flags being raised. Some researchers worry that engaging with these digital ghosts, so to speak, could actually increase the risk of complicated grief.
Complicated grief, meaning...
Meaning it makes it harder to accept the reality of the loss, to integrate it and move forward healthily. It might actually keep people stuck.
Right, instead of helping process it, it could encourage a kind of denial.
Potentially, yes. And look at this, finding 60% of women using AI companions, slightly different but related tech, reported feeling more depressed. 52% felt severe loneliness.
60%. That's concerning. It suggests these things might actually make grief worse for some or create unhealthy attachment.
It certainly raises that possibility. And then there's the risk of re-traumatization, that example of a survivor suddenly encountering an AI version of an abuser. It's just horrifying to think about.
Oh, yeah. That really hits home the potential for serious psychological harm.
Then you get into the more philosophical arguments about authenticity, about human connection itself. Critics basically say, look, no matter how good the simulation is, it can't be the person. It can't replicate their unique inner life, their consciousness, their feelings.
That intangible quality, the essence of who they were.
Exactly. It's missing.
And is there a risk these digital copies could mess with our own memories? Like, human memory isn't fixed, right? It evolves as we process things, including loss. If you have this perfect, unchanging digital version, does that freeze things? Does it stop that natural integration of their absence?
That's a really valid concern, disrupting the healthy, dynamic process of remembering and integrating loss. And it's interesting, even people who use this tech often admit its limits. They know they aren't getting the true answer from the AI, which kind of makes you question the whole foundation. If you know it's not real, what exactly are you getting from that interaction? Is it truly helpful long term?
So I've got this really complex picture, potential comfort, potential connection,
Yeah.
but also these serious ethical and psychological red flags. How do we even start thinking about finding a balance here, especially as the tech just keeps racing ahead?
Well, the study really hammers home that explicit consent before death has to be the absolute starting point, non-negotiable. Public opinion clearly backs that up, as we saw with those numbers. So companies need really clear, transparent ways for people to give or withhold that consent while they're alive, and it needs to be properly documented.
And it feels like we need clear laws, too, to stop people being recreated without permission. That right to be left dead idea needs teeth. Plus, ways to clearly label these AIs, right? So there's no confusion, no deception, total transparency about what you're interacting with, what kind of laws could work.
You might see changes to existing data privacy laws, maybe adding specific protections for posthumous digital selves, or maybe entirely new laws dealing just with creating and using these digital replicas, setting out rights, who's responsible, potential liabilities. It's uncharted territory, legally.
Looking ahead, there's also this idea floating around. Could these technologies maybe be treated like therapeutics?
Yeah, potentially. Subject to regulation, maybe even prescribed or guided by mental health professionals in specific cases. Where the benefits seem to outweigh the risks and there's proper support and clear boundaries set, how would a therapist even use that?
It's interesting to imagine it being used alongside existing therapies.
Yeah.
A bit like maybe guided journaling or letter writing, but with that simulated response. But the key would have to be educating the user, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Making sure people really get the limitations. Understanding it's a tool, maybe to jog a memory or help process something internally, but absolutely not a replacement for the person.
Absolutely. Ultimately, developing this responsibly needs what you might call a measured balance.
Right.
Innovation, yes, but with really careful ethical thought. It forces us to ask these huge questions about being human, about relationships, about how we remember people.
And it puts a big responsibility on the tech companies, doesn't it? They need strong ethical frameworks, consent, transparency on data use, thinking hard about the psychological impact.
For sure. And it really calls for a bigger conversation in society as a whole about death, technology, and what remembrance means in this digital age. Because there's a real risk these replicas could create an illusion that death hasn't really happened, fundamentally changing how we relate to mortality itself.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we're left with this core tension, aren't we? The potential for real comfort, that feeling of connection, balanced against these very significant ethical and psychological worries that need careful handling.
And it keeps coming back to the fact that grief is just so intensely personal. What helps one person might be genuinely harmful to another. So the most balanced way forward seems to be one that puts those ethical lines, consent, transparency, front and center, and really prioritizes psychological well-being as this tech develops.
Ultimately, no matter how sophisticated the AI gets, it can never truly capture the sheer complexity, the richness of a human being. Maybe this whole exploration of digital resurrection is actually a powerful reminder, a reminder of how precious our real lived experiences are, how irreplaceable true human connection is, and the profound mark we leave on each other's lives, whether or not we choose to interact with these digital echoes later on.